find downtown, but in many other parts of the state. When Indianapolis was first founded, the White River, Fall Creek, and a couple of the other key rivers here were a big reason why the city was located here. For most of human history, rivers were the center of a lot of human life. It was a place that was easy to get around. You could ship really heavy things up and down the river. You had an easy source of food. You have a way of watering your crops. And so everything from the Nile in Africa, the Tigris and Euphrates in Asia, the Ganges in India, the Mississippi here in the United States, these were places where people wanted to live. Unfortunately, the river didn't really have a very long life as a useful thing for the city because it's also a really good toilet. And a lot of our history as a city was the White River being much less white than was in its name, but rather brown and smelly and contaminated. The meatpacking district used to be very close to this river, and many of the things that they didn't need anymore, they would just dump in the river. Toxic waste from factories, trash in general, just it was a pretty gross place to be around. And lots of disease was in this river as well. Now, we are able to use a lot of this river for hydropower because the river, in spite of how polluted we made it, is always flowing as long as there's enough rain. When the river is moving, it generates kinetic energy, and kinetic energy is the energy of anything moving. If you put a turbine in it or some sort of wheel that can turn and collect that energy and turn it into electricity, then you've definitely got a way of making electricity. There are a lot of places in Indiana have tried to use this river and other rivers like it to make electricity, but it's not as strong as some of the larger rivers in our country. So it's never really been a great source of hydroelectric energy. In the distance behind me, you'll see 3 blue smokestacks, and that factory behind me is painted blue and pretty right now to look like the Colts. But a long time ago, it was one of many factories on this side of the city. Most of downtown was covered in things that were generating electricity in usually really inefficient ways. And downtown smelled like the smoke that those things were using in order to power their hardware. And so a lot of the people living in this part of the city had tons of diseases, and a lot of them were respiratory. Some of them were digestive diseases from the river that was also very polluted at the time. It was not a very good place to live downtown. It was not a healthy place to live. And many of the people that had to work here, because this was the only source of employment, were then also facing the consequences of having an environmentally bad area that they were living in and having diseases because of. That problem is something we call environmental injustice, because most often people that have the least means to be able to be somewhere else, whether it's lack of a job or lack of the money to buy a house that's further away, they're going to be the ones who are suffering the consequences of the air pollution coming from that smoke and the water pollution that is in the river. It can be easy to take a lot of our natural resources for granted beyond the bills we pay to use them. Obviously, we pay energy bills for our water and our electrical bill, and those are expensive. Part of the reason for that is because of utilities like this. Behind me is the original Indianapolis Water Company building. This is built in 1870 when the city was first really in operation. It was the first municipal water building for the city. It was in operation for almost 100 years, 1 year shy, to be honest. And it was using water from the canal to pump into our city so that we had access to drinking water, as well as water for fire hoses, and then for our homes. But running water wasn't a thing in pre-city places. People would have to get their own water, buckets, carry it with horses, figure out a way, maybe a well, to get that water for their usage. And so having running water in a city was a massive task, one that we now kind of see as taking for granted because it's mostly underground and pipes underneath the city. But those all had to be built at one point and then pumped using energy to get to our homes.
Hey guys, right now I'm standing at the top of an island called Spectacle Island, which, as you can see, is sitting on a bay which is overlooking the city of Boston. It's actually part of the city of Boston, and back in the day it used to be about half this size. But over time, the city of Boston dumped a ton of trash into the bay, and the trash basically was on this island, sitting on this island, rotting in the sun and collecting all kinds of bacteria and nastiness, and basically got molded into this island, so it's twice the size it used to be. Now, this island has become a recreational area because all the trash has been buried, but it's basically one giant landfill. And back in the day, the trash that was there would also sometimes wash up on beaches and end up inside the bay. The other kind of nasty thing that happened was that they used to not actually put their sewage into pipes and sewers. They just kind of dumped all their poop into the bay. And the city of Boston decided that's disgusting, we're done, and we're going to sue. And what you see behind me is a place called Deer Island. You might be able to see these like little white domes there. Those domes are full of poop. About 3.6 billion gallons of poop a day. And now all of the nastiness goes into a tunnel under the bay to that island to get processed and cleaned and chlorinated and released back into the wild. This entire island, being made of trash, is still surprisingly fertile with lots of birds and wildlife and plants. And that's because over a period of time, a bit of human activity and a bit of natural activity has basically restored this place to the island that it used to be.